all I did was read script after script after script after script. You start to absorb what it is. You begin to hear the rhythms. You begin to see how the story rises and falls and rises again. You just got to write.
Not only is he a writer, but he's a director, he's a producer. He's also known in the business as a showrunner. Please help me welcome the incredible, wonderful, talented, exceptional writer, Danny Kallis. What is your writing process like? Like, let's say you have an idea and now you're going to create a script.
I operate out of the gift of desperation.
Okay.
It takes a certain amount of motivation combined with some strategic procrastination to finally get me to write something.
So do you wait like 2 days before you have to turn it in, a day before you have to turn it in?
Well, let's start with the fact that I'm much better when somebody's paying me to write it.
Okay.
Let's just start
You're more
with that.
motivated.
I'm very motivated
Okay.
when that happens,
Okay.
but it didn't start that way.
Okay.
You know, it was waking up in the middle of the night after having dropped out of law school and staring at a cottage cheese ceiling, having just had dinner with one of my friends who had started at some firm at $30,000 a year, which was a lot back then, and thinking, oh my God, I've ruined my life. And then I just kept writing spec scripts. And I wrote a movie script that sucked. It really started, certainly for me, with writing about something that I knew, which was the great American where I had worked. And that's what I often tell, new writers or young writers, which is the obvious, write what you know, or some version thereof.
Right. Why should they not write about something they don't know? Because a lot of times you go, well, why can't I write about?
You absolutely can. I don't mean to suggest that you can't. In fact, for many writers, that's what it is. Usually somewhere there's a connection to who you are, what you are. Something, even if it's fantastical and has no relationship to your life, usually it comes out in the writing. But that's something you can look at after the fact. And every writer is different as to what their process is. I do a lot of thinking. I would come up with my best ideas when I'm on a trip, when I'm driving, when I'm showering, anything
Away from the
other
computer?
than sitting there at the computer.
So how do
writing.
you capture it when
Oh,
you're...
I make notes, I jot
Okay.
things down. Truth of the matter is I practice telling my story a lot.
Oh,
Well, I'm
okay.
thinking of doing something like this, and then I tell the story. And the more I work at it, the
So
more
you're
it starts
pitching it
to...
before you've written it.
By the time I sit down to write it, I can usually... It can take me 4 years to come up with something, and I can
Okay.
write it in 4 weeks.
Okay. It's marinating.
And you're working it. I mean, that's the other part, is practicing your storytelling craft, is trying it out on people. I mean, but every writer is different. I remember when I started on Silver Spoons, I was very deliberate. I wrote very detailed outlines. And I was working with this guy, Jim Gagan, who ended up being a lifelong friend as well as my co-writer on Creating the Sweet Life of Zach and Cody, and on deck, he was the co-creator. But we started together on Silver Spoons. I was there the first year, he came in the second year, and we had these Selectric typewriters.
I remember
right?
them
Remember
well.
the little ball,
Yes, I do.
and you would type, and
That's
it would be, chickadoom, 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 and just furiously popping off of that cylinder. And Jim, I would describe as a pure writer. I mean, he just had to write. He gets up every day, and he will write, and he will
Jim
write
Brooks.
jokes. No, this is Jim Gagan.
Oh, okay.
Jim Brooks very quickly once said to me, when I asked him about his writing when he was working on a movie, I said, "What's a good day for you?" And he said, 2 pages.
That's
2
good.
pages.
Yes.
If Jim Brooks can sit down and get himself 2 good pages in one day, he felt like he
Wow.
had a good writing day. That was Jim.
Wow.
Okay? With Gagan, I mean, like I said, every day, and he would write jokes, he was but he was always working. So we would be given our assignments, sent back to our rooms to work. So we had an attaching door between our 2 offices. We shared the same floor with the Jeffersons, by the way, at that point. So I'm in my office, and I'm writing my script, and I'm sitting there going, chickadoom, chickadoom, and it had those erase
Yes.
things. Remember, we could go back like a line.
Yes.
Right,
Is
so
that
I would
little
go
strip?
little strip, right?
That's
So
right.
I would go chickadoom, 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 ding, chickadoom, 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 ding, and then I go chicka-dong, 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 and then chicka-dong, 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 ding, chicka-dong, chicka-dong, chicka-dong. And I'm always releasing, meanwhile, Jim's next door, and all I hear is chicka-dong, 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 ding, chicka-dong, 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 ding, chicka-dong, and he never stopped. Not for an hour, not for 2 hours. Finally, after the umpteenth chong with me, I just threw the door open. I said, "Aren't you done with your goddamn script already?" And Jim goes, "Oh yeah, I finished it an hour ago. I'm working on my play." I hate you. I hate you. And that was the beginning of a beautiful friendship. So every writer's process is different. I look, if you get to fade out, in my book, you're a writer. If you get to the end, now go back and rewrite.
What did you say?
I said, now go back and rewrite.
Say that one more time.
Rewrite.
Rewrite.
Okay.
So you come up with an idea, you mull it over, you share with a lot of people, you're basically just storytelling, and now you are ready.
Well, let's start with the assignment, because that's where it starts. And if you're not getting paid, or if someone's not giving you the assignment, then you got to give the assignment to yourself.
Okay.
So what's the assignment? All right, the assignment to get started is you need a spec script if it's TV. If you're going to write a movie, then you need to write your movie. And if you're writing a spec script, then you're writing for a show that's already on the air, right? So all the work has been done for you. The characters have been created, the conflict, the situation, the tone of the show, everything is there for you. But like I said, as a showrunner, I'm killing every week to get a new story. So if you can walk in with a story for me, you have made a sale. That's what I'm looking for when I got all those episodes to do.
Because your writers will
I'll give it to
up.
whoever
Okay.
did it. I mean, we're always going to rewrite. It's always
Okay.
going to change. So in my case, I wanted to, Dave Davis, after he read my pilot, said, you got to do a spec script. So I looked at Taxi and I said, all right, what's the story that I want to do? And I had a couple of ideas. The first thing you do is you look at the characters you want to write for. You got to go right down the middle of the series. All right. So in the case of Taxi, it was all these losers, except for one who wanted to be a cab driver. And I thought I wanted to do a show about Louis, Danny DeVito, and Mary Lou Henner. What was the primary conflict between those two characters? Well, he was always hitting on her. The story idea I came up with is I said, well, what if, two very important words, what if Louis gets caught peeping at Elaine? She gets him fired. And that became the premise for my second one that I wrote, which was Louis goes too far, and then he's got to beg for his job back after he gets fired, convincing her that he understood what was wrong with peeping at a woman without her permission. Sexual harassment story. The second one I did was one where, again, you start with character. Well, the hardest character to write a story for was the reasonable man character lead, Alex Rieger in Taxi. He wanted to be a taxi driver, and I thought, well, I wanted to do a show about addiction in some way. So I thought, well, what if Alex was a compulsive gambler? Somebody gives him the biggest tip of his life, dropping him off at Atlantic City, and he goes in and he goes off the wagon and he starts gambling. And then I thought, well, the story for most addicts is it takes another addict to save you. And the other favorite character that I had on that show, that I loved on that show, was Reverend Jim, who was a major drug addict. And it's Reverend Jim saving Alex, the compulsive gambler, in a toilet when Alex is begging Jim for his last dime. The story, the beginning, the middle, the end, for both of these remained the same. Inciting incident which got him into trouble, peeping at Elaine, or going off the wagon. A complication, which is he gets fired in the first episode. In the gambling episode, it's that he starts to lose his money again and then has to be saved in the end. Those things are the things you have to do in writing your story. So the process is, once you get yourself that inciting incident, once you kind of figure out where you may be going in the end, you're rewriting towards that the whole time, including the stories that were actually told. I mean, I came up in my draft of these scripts with penultimate scenes and stories and how they would unfold, but by the time the rewrites were done and the last show was shot, those stories had been rewritten 3, 4, 5 times, trying to find just the right one. My current writing partner these days came in as a young writer. It was at the end of Who's the Boss, where I was killing for stories. She came in and she gave me her what if, which was what if Angela and Tony, who in a previous episode had checked into a hotel under the same name, and now the IRS says they're officially married. I went, oh my God, in the 7th year of a show, I'm killing for that story. That's a great story for us to do. The most important part of the process is the what if. What's the story? What's that inciting incident? Or what's that last scene that you just want to go for? When we came up with The Sweet Life, Jim Gagin and I were working on Silver Spoons. We were, well over 30 plus years ago. And we had just gotten rid of Jason Bateman, who went on to do his own series off that series. We had just gotten Alfonso Ribeiro, who had done the Tap Dance Kid on Broadway. And we said, this kid's a star. Let's see if we can come up with a show with him and get out from under these people who have got us working here at 2, 3 a.m. in the morning. What do we do? What's the what if? Well, the kid's talented, music would be good, blah, blah, blah. I had always said I wanted to do something like Eloise at the Plaza, but we couldn't get the rights to that. Jim went back east and had stayed in New York, and he had just seen Bobby Short at the Carlisle. And he came back and he said, what if we did a show about a guy like Bobby Short, who has a kid like Alfonso Ribeiro, and as part of their gig at the hotel they work at, they get a room. And that was the first Sweet Life. We wrote it twice, sold it twice, but the third time was the charm when I went in and met with the Disney Channel. And now it were these twins that I was brought. So it starts with character. And I pitched them The Sweet Life, only mom is the singer, with these two twins. And the line I used to sell it was, I said, it's about two Bart Simpsons run amok at the Ritz. And in that premise, again, in that pitch, everything was implied that had to be written. So when you talk about what's your process, well, if you got something that keys you into an active premise, and it starts with characters, two Bart Simpsons, run amok is your verb, at the Ritz, you know what you got.
Once you've pitched it and they buy it,
yes,
you come out with your outline for...
Right, after I did that, it was, okay, sold, go write it. For Smart Guy, like I said, it's always easier when someone brings you a project. So if you don't have one, you've got to give yourself your own assignment.
So that one was already created?
The shows that are already created, you're trying to sell them a spectrum.
Oh, okay.
Original shows,
Okay.
you're coming up with everything.
An idea. Okay.
You need your character, you need your, so, and then the situation, and then what the inherent conflict is week in and week out. So with Smart Guy, they brought me the kid. So I had a real kid. I asked Suzanne DePass, who was the person who brought the kid to me, and she was brilliant. I mean, found the Jackson 5, my goodness. She knew talent. I said, tell me, how would you describe Taj? You knew him, you know him. Because TV tends to be much more of a personality medium, especially with kids. You're not going to get, the acting, where they assume a whole other persona and person role. She said, he's like a little man. He's really smart. So now I go home and I start thinking about, okay, he's a smart kid. And then I started to free associate. Well, in my life, and again, you go back to sort of what you know, even if it isn't exactly your life, you're looking for that. Because the truth about writing is if you write something good, it's going to be universal and it's going to speak to anybody, even if they did not have that experience. It will somehow seem real to them. I had a brilliant younger brother who, when he was 8 years old, went scavenging for parts down the alley and built himself a laser, and for a science project demonstrated it in class and burnt the teacher's desk. Smart guy. Right. I went to high school with a kid, Cammie Monash, who was this little genius kid, in my calculus class, and he was 11 years old. So I thought, okay, smart guy. I'll do a smart guy show about a genius kid in a blue-collar family, basically. And the way I pitched it was, I went in and I said, like I said, I'm very visual, so I pitched the opening scene. A yellow bus pulls up in front of a high school. You go close to the door. It swings open, and you see a high school kid get out, another tall high school kid get out, another tall high school kid. And then at the bottom of the frame, you just see the top of a kid's head. And then behind him, another tall high school kid. And then as you widen out, a cute little cheerleader comes out and says, "Did you get on the wrong bus, little boy?" He goes, "Nope, I go to school here. See you at the prom." And walks off. Now he goes in to his class. He sits down at a desk in front of a girl who's being hit on by this cute guy. And as he sits down at the desk, the guy leans over and he says, "Scram!" He gives him a look and he walks away. And the girl goes, "Well, why were you so mean to that cute little boy?" And he goes, "That's no cute little boy, that's my brother." At which point Garth Ansir said, "I like this show, it's a buy." So what the process is, you need that what if. It can come from anywhere. I became friends with this guy, Matt Williams, who had created Home Improvement. Mm-hmm. And he wanted me to work on the show, but I wasn't able to. I was doing another one. I called him up and I said, "Matt, I have an idea for a show for Tim and for Home Improvement." He said, "What is it?" I said, "I'm just going to give you the title and you'll know what it is." He says, "Okay, what is it?" And I said, "To Kill a Woodpecker." And he said, "Thank you very much." Hung up the phone, and a month later they had a show on about the character going to war with a woodpecker that was driving him nuts, mm-hmm. which was the perfect Tim Allen show. It starts with his character. Mm-hmm. Man versus nature, man versus man. That was all Home Improvement was, but in a comedy.
Right.
You're bouncing off and free associating with whatever your challenge is mm-hmm. when you're writing.
Mm-hmm. In creating a show like The Smart Guy, which you got the actor, you were told we're writing for this kid.
Right.
So then you came up with the pitch. Do you do a Bible, like of stories, for your first season? How does that work?
Usually, you pitch them the show, they buy the premise, then they want to know, anywhere from 5 to 10 stories. They sometimes ask for Bibles. The big difference was that when you're doing episodic TV, which is what we used to do all the time, you didn't need a Bible, per se. Because if you had a good show, you knew the good show was going to give you stories.
Okay.
It had legs. You could tell that it had legs. You still had to give them an idea of what the type of stories were. These days, they do serialized, which is the whole binge-watching thing, where, it's like we all lose our friends and families.
Which was started by House of Cards. Thank you very much.
Back in 2008, I went to NAFI. Ted Sarandos, who
mm-hmm.
is Netflix, was giving a speech about what they were doing at Netflix, and they were just starting into originals. And as I sat there listening, he said, "We just bought The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody." And I'm going, "Oh, you can't get a better entree for me than this." So after his talk, I went up and I said, "I'm Danny Kallis, co-creator of The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. Would you be interested in buying another series from me? Because I'm down here trying to independently market my own shows." Mm-hmm. And he said, "Well, the answer is no, because we're more interested in shows that people watch over and over again from beginning to end. We want them to come to Netflix and then watch it." They weren't even calling it binge watching yet. And I said, "But why would you get The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody then?" He said, "Because if it's an established show, what we've discovered is kids will watch it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And that works for our business model. So we wouldn't buy an original, but of course we'd buy one that was already established." So the way we view TV has changed so radically. And now instead of doing 22 episodes in a season, we're looking at doing anywhere from 6 to 10. Doesn't mean stories are any less important, but the model has so significantly changed in that way. Back then, before House of Cards, they were figuring out that streaming, well, it wasn't even streaming then, it was downloading, it was sending out
the videos.
The videos, that was a business model. I mean, in the mm-hmm. days when my uncle first started in TV, that golden age of television, you saw the episode once when it was on, and then summer reruns. I mean,
that's it. Yeah,
that was it.
You having been a veteran in this business for so many years and knowing the ins and outs of writing back in the day to what it's evolved to today, that you have a business in which you can mentor young writers or help get them on the right track. There's so many people out there teaching classes on how to sell your show, how to pitch your show, but they've never sold a show. They've never pitched a show. They've never written a show. And yet they've become the script doctors. And so what I appreciate is the fact that you've done it all. In addition to what you do, your day job, which is running shows, you also have a business where you help young writers or writers who got stuck. I would think if I was writing and I got stuck, I would want to go to somebody to kind of help me get out of the ditch.
I had great mentors, great teachers, and so paying back is very much a part of, it's who I am now more than ever. I was given this great opportunity to go teach down at Chapman. I thought my career was pretty much over. I was about 50 at the time. I had just shot this pilot for Sweet Life and didn't know if it was going to get a pickup, and had the best time of my life marshaling these 60 kids down at Chapman to actually shoot this pilot they had written in a previous class that a friend of mine had written. He said, "You're the only writer, producer who's also director that I know, and you want to teach." And I said, "I'll take the class." It was just fantastic, you know. And they even gave me a plaque. The Friendship Hotel, on this day, May 17, 2004, we present Professor Danny Kallis the first annual Commy Award for Best Professional in a Student Sitcom Production. And they gave me the top 10 Dannyisms. 10, comedy is precision. 9, that is horrible, off the students' tears. But it's pretty good, we can work with it. 8, what about a RuPaul type? Can we get a RuPaul type? I really want a RuPaul type. Number 7, quiet. Wait, speak up. Number 6, hold. Number 5, did I ever tell you all about the time? Yeah, I did a lot of that.
Oh, that's hilarious.
4, you have 17 hours to restructure Act 2. Is that going to be a problem? 3, I yell at you for everyone's benefit. 2, hold. 1, track the attitudes, people. So,
nice.
When you're on a big sound stage and you got 100 people, you know, it's an army. Teaching these kids was great, and teaching them in a way where I said, I'm going to run this just the way I would run a show. No different. They loved it. At least a handful of them ended up working in the business. And after that, once Sweet Life had its run, I went back, started teaching at UCLA. And now I'm developing a website and a service in which I can reach more students who really do have something to offer and are looking to produce scripts, not simply experiment. The best group I had coming through UCLA started with me in how to outline your spec script, the whole process, and actually deconstruct a script for a show already on the air, and then construct your own.
And that's important before you start writing, because you need to know what that process is.
The best thing to do, I didn't have the classes, the schools, but I had a girlfriend at the time who was the secretary to Tony Thermopolis, who was running ABC. Mm-hmm. And he got all the scripts from all the sitcoms for ABC, but he wouldn't read them. So she would send me all the scripts. So all I did was read script after script after script after script. You start to absorb what it is. You begin to hear the rhythms. You begin to see how the story rises and falls and rises again. So when you talk about today, and you just got to write. You got to put it down on paper.
Right, but what you've done is you've boiled down all the experience you have and say, okay, I'm going to give you a cheat sheet. This is what the spine of the story is. We're going to start with the skeleton, and then we're going to add to it. At UCLA, you taught, your first class was on outlining the story?
UCLA has a great setup. The first thing they do, and this is for half hour, hour, and I'm sure they have it for screenplay. In the half hour world, they start with a class on outlining your spec script. And in that, you start with the story that you come up with. And you learn how to develop a story and write the outline, from which, in the second class, you actually write the full script. And that's where you will learn how to write your dialogue, how to attack a scene, where to come in, where to go out, and of course the rewrite, because you're always rewriting throughout that. The third class follows a similar one, only now you're doing the pilot.
Okay.
You're writing an original premise for a pilot.
You've learned how to write a script, so
Correct.
now we want to see what you can do
As
on
an
your
original.
own. Okay.
Where before all the elements were there, the character, the conflict, the tone, the who, what, where, why, and how of it is there, we still needed the story. Now you need everything when you do your own. And that's more difficult and requires something of a different skill set as well. And you do first the outline on that, then you do writing the script. And there was one group in particular which ended up being a core group of 8 students over the course of 1 year who stuck with me through the whole thing. And I would say there's at least 5, 6 of them that I would have put on staff as beginning writers on a show because they had learned how to write and they had proven their ability to deliver, and that's key. So from a point of view of what do I tell writers about how to structure a story, I remember the first speech writing coach I ever had when I was a freshman in high school. He said, the first thing is the ho-hum part. Oh, what's the ho-hum part? The ho-hum part is, you better grab my attention or I'm walking out of here. Mm-hmm. Why should I listen? And that's your opening. That's your inciting incident. Why should I watch this show? You need a solid opening to draw you in. Mm-hmm. The best book I ever read that gave me a sense of how to do the active premise and to deliver on a beginning, middle, end was a book called The Art of Dramatic Writing.
Yes.
Lajos Egri wrote a terrific book.
Yes.
Starts with character, of course, all the time. But in it, he discusses the Hegelian theory of the dialectic. It's thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, otherwise known as your beginning, middle, and end.
There we go, back to the beginning, middle, and end.
And in that thesis, you set up what the character's conflict or journey is. Now, there are plenty of places online where you can go find the hero's journey.
Right.
And you can get it broken down not just into beginning, middle, and end, but you can have 8 parts of the journey and the rising conflict and tension, all of the elements that help you fill out that story and give you your scenes. If you start with a premise, a thesis, something that is challenging to your lead character, and then you give them an obstacle, something that's going to make it more difficult to achieve that want, that end. If you don't have a character that wants something, you've got nothing to listen to. I'm ho-humming my way to the next channel. Once you've reached that, then you got to get to that synthesis, that great last scene. Think about all the great last scenes that you've seen that may not have ever been there when you first started out, but somehow over the process of discovering your character, the journey, and where that took you, you get this incredible last scene. That's your synthesis that brings it all together at the end. That rising conflict is everything, and the best way to learn it is take your favorite TV shows, take your favorite movies, and deconstruct them. And in deconstructing it, one of the things you want to look for is what's a real story beat. Most people don't know what a real story beat looks like. In one of my classes, this woman was writing an Insecure. And I said, go deconstruct the pilot of Insecure. And so she came back in. I said, okay, tell me the first scene. What was the first story beat? Well, she's in front of her computer, not a story beat. And it's her birthday. Okay, it's her birthday, not a story beat though. And behind her is her boyfriend asleep in bed. Okay, still not a story beat. And she's online and she gets a text from her ex-boyfriend who wants to see her. And she went, oh, that's the story beat. I said, correct. Girl on her birthday gets a text
from an
ex-boyfriend while her current boyfriend is asleep in bed behind her. That's a story beat.
Right.
Everything else is not. It's important. It's going to be used in the play, but it's not a story beat. Deconstruct episodes, deconstruct movies, really challenge yourself and say, what's the story beat? What's moving the story forward? And the minute you hit something that isn't moving your story forward, it's going to be on the cutting room floor.
The lie is that those that can't do teach. So it's always great when you have people who do teach. When you mentor a young writer, do you hold that writer accountable to get so many pages done within a week or a month, or to bring you back a whole script? Is it just you're walking them through process in a general way, or do you get specific with them? Do you give them notes on the script?
Right, two different questions. The deadlines are the deadlines. You know, I used to call them drop dead dates. Like I would say to my line producer, when do I have to give you a decision on this? And he'd say, Friday. I said, no. I want to know my drop dead date, next Tuesday. Okay, thank you. That means no matter what, if I don't have that decision, I'm screwed.
Okay.
Same for a writer. Now, I don't care if you write it the hour before. I don't care if you write it the day I gave you the assignment and you went home. All I care about is
the drop dead date.
Is my drop dead
Okay.
date. Does it come in? And when you're not working a show and when you're not on assignment, it's really hard to give yourself drop dead dates.
Unless you're getting a paycheck.
Boy, that makes it easy.
Okay.
So you got to pretend, you got to fool yourself. So from the second, I think, was what sort of notes do I give? If I'm teaching a class, then part of the note is to provide also a more of a lesson as to how this relates to writing and the process and all. But if we're just working, I'm not teaching.
Okay.
We're just trying to solve a problem.
Okay.
We're equal. What I would tell writers in a room is that you can disagree with me once, you can disagree with me twice, you can disagree with me 13 times. But the minute I say this is the way we're going with the story, I expect you all to be rowing in the same direction at that point. But in the process, you know, I don't care where that joke comes from or where that story turn comes from, as long as it works.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it better. So in giving notes, that's the approach I take, which is, okay, how do we make this better? Why isn't this working? Here's where I stubbed my toe on your story, where I stopped being interested. You lost me here. It's really that simple. When I give somebody a script to read, I don't necessarily, you know, what I'm really looking for is when did it stop working for you?
Okay.
When did I lose you? The 10 commandments of writing, I kind of think boils down to thou shalt not bore.
Keep us entertained. Engage us. It's that as the filmmaker, it's that as the director. You know, the director's job is to keep it moving so that it flows. The writing should flow. The acting should flow.
When you're clicking, it's all value added. Everybody brings something to it. And the next thing you know, you got a hit. So everybody go do a hit.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us. If you liked what you saw, and even if you didn't, I need you to go and subscribe to this channel and hit the bell so you can get the notifications. That's all I got for you today. Thank you.